There's a moment in adolescence where the world feels both impossibly large and unbearably fragile. A single summer can feel infinite, but a single fight with a friend can feel like the end of everything. Final Fantasy VIII is built out of that feeling. It's a story about saving the world, yes, about a sorceress and time compression and fate. But more than that, it's about the fragile, fleeting bonds of youth. And like so many stories about growing up, it's about those bonds unavoidably fracturing. Because while Final Fantasy VIII puts you in command of a group of teenagers trained to be soldiers, it never stops reminding you that these people are just kids. They're awkward, they're insecure, they're full of bravado and fear. They fall in love too quickly, argue too loudly, and retreat into themselves when they feel hurt. They're not heroes in shining armor. They're young people fumbling toward adulthood in the middle of war. Some having a harder time than others. Squall Leonhard, the game's protagonist, is almost a parody of teenage isolation. Arms crossed, brooding, telling everyone whatever. Aloof to a point. He's a character defined by his refusal to connect, not because he doesn't want to, but because he doesn't know how. And who hasn't felt that strange paradox of being surrounded by people your age, sharing dorms, classrooms, maybe even battlefields, but still feeling completely alone. I remember being a kid at school waiting for my sitter to come pick me up after the final bell had rung. I'd usually sit and read a book by myself despite being around other kids that I had known forever. Not because I hated anyone, but because sometimes solitude felt safer than the possibility of rejection. And Squall embodies that instinct. The world asks him to lead, to connect, to love, but every part of him resists. He is the embodiment of a teenager convinced that vulnerability is weakness. But Final Fantasy VIII is just not about Squall. It's about a group, a cast of friends and almost friends who orbit each other, sometimes in harmony, and sometimes in quiet resentment. Quistis, the instructor who is barely older than her students, trying to desperately maintain authority even as she longs for connection. Zell, brash and loud, overcompensating for his securities with too much energy. Selphie, the cheerful optimist whose playfulness feels almost manic in the face of war. Irvin, the flirt who hides his fear of failure behind bravado. Renoa, the free spirit who forces Squall to confront the very emotions he tries to bury. And what's striking is how fragile their bonds feel. They're grown together by circumstance, by seed, by missions, by fate. But their connections are tenuous, shifting, full of misunderstandings. It feels less like a destined party of heroes and more like a group of classmates who just happen to share a table. Isn't that what growing up feels like? You meet people, you laugh with them, you fight with them, you swear you'll never lose touch, but deep down, you know these connections can be temporary. And the game literalizes this fragility through its strangest plot twist. The main cast grew up together in the same orphanage, but they forgot. Their shared past was erased by the use of their guardian forces, creatures that grant power at the cost of memory. It's an absurd twist on the surface, a convenient narrative trick, but symbolically it cuts deep, because isn't that exactly how adolescence feels? You grow up with people, they're everything to you for a moment, but then, you forget. You move away, you grow apart, those faces blur. Another skeleton in the long pile of bones. I think about classmates I once saw every day, people I told secrets to, people I thought would be permanent, and now I can't even remember their last names. Memory erodes, connections dissolve. And in Final Fantasy VIII, forgetting isn't just a plot device, it's the tragedy of growing up reflected in its mechanics. and the central romance of the game between Squall and Renoa feels less like a timeless love story and more like a fragile, desperate attempt to hold on to something fleeting. Squall resists, terrified of loss, but Renoa pushes. She insists on connection, insists that love is worth the risk, and for a while the game lets you believe it. There are moments of genuine sweetness, a dance, a promise, a hand reaching out in the void, but always there's the shadow of time pressing down. Because Final Fantasy VIII is obsessed with time, with its compression, with its loss, with how it stretches and contracts. Time in this game is both the villain and the setting, and in the end, time always wins. Youth can't last forever. People who defined your adolescence can't always stay. Even love, no matter how intense, is shaped by the unavoidable change. By the game's ending, the party is victorious. The sorceress defeated. Time itself is restored. But there's no sense of everlasting unity. The group doesn't feel like a band of lifelong companions. They feel like friends at the end of a school year, already half fading into memory. The final cutscene is striking. Squall, lost in the void, clinging desperately to Renoa's face as the world collapses around him. His victory is not about defeating evil, it's about not losing her in the blur of time. And when the credits roll, the game doesn't show us a unified team ready for more adventures. It shows us fragments, laughter, eating, celebration, small fleeting moments that feel more like snapshots than promises. The sense is not of permanence, but of ephemerality. Because growing up isn't about gathering lifelong allies, it's about passing through each other's lives like comets, burning brightly and then fading away. But when I think of Final Fantasy VIII, I don't remember the junction system or how the mechanics of Guardian Forces work. I remember the ache of watching characters grow close, only to realize how easily they could drift apart. It's about saving the world, yes, but more than that, it's about how impossible it is to save youth itself. How every friendship, every love, every bond forged in adolescence is temporary, beautiful, necessary, but always slipping away. And that, maybe, is what makes the game so haunting. Because we all lived it. We all felt the intensity of growing up together. And we've all felt the quiet tragedy of growing apart. Final Fantasy VIII doesn't try to fix that. It just lets you feel it. The way time erodes memory. The way friends blur into strangers. The way love shines all the brighter because it can't last forever. It's not just fantasy. It's a memory. And like all memories, it lingers, fragile and complete, and already fading.